We need to see action taken right away.
With the more contagious UK variant of COVID-19 detected in multiple Metro Vancouver schools, there are renewed calls for stricter COVID protocols in class.
The current measures are not enough to keep students and staff safe in schools.
So we're going to look into legal action to be able to hold the VPD accountable for what they've done.
Indigenous protesters are condemning the actions of Vancouver police after they arrested 4 people in the lobby of a downtown high-rise on Friday. Just ahead, we hear from one of the demonstrators who was taken into custody.
Canada will see its biggest vaccine shipment yet this week, but there is a bigger task still ahead.
Hopefully, the provinces have been looking at capacity from all angles.
The latest snapshot on COVID-19 in this province covers a 3-day period. There are 1,428 new cases of the virus, and 8 more people have died since Friday. 223 people are currently in hospital, with 63 in intensive care. To date, more than 218,000 doses of the COVID vaccine have been administered. The man accused of running an illegal nightclub out of his penthouse in downtown Vancouver made another court appearance today. Mavasagi was arrested on January the 31st after an event inside the Telus Gardens on Richard Street near West Georgia. Since then, he's been charged with 2 counts of failing to comply with pandemic safety orders. Another charge involving the unauthorized sale of liquor was approved last week. The 42-year-old did not appear in person today. His next court date is scheduled for March the 22nd. A group in Surrey has found out the hard way that gambling can be costly. RCMP say they busted an illegal poker game last Thursday at a location in Wally while officers were doing a COVID compliance check. 13 people were hit with $230 fines, and the owner of the business where that gambling den was found has to fork over $2,300. Surrey RCMP say this case is proof that they are, quote, not bluffing when it comes to enforcing public health orders.
When it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, safety measures in BC schools have been a sticking point from the start. Now concerns are growing as a more contagious variant of COVID-19 has been detected in multiple Metro Vancouver schools. Over the weekend, the Surrey School District alerted parents that variant B117, also known as the UK variant, was detected at 6 Surrey schools. It includes AHP Matthew Elementary and a Cole Woodward Hill Elementary. There was also a case in North Delta at Hellings Elementary.
It has heightened awareness and concern even more.
The union representing BC teachers says it's time to move away from a one-size-fits-all approach to COVID safety in class.
We think that school districts ought to have the ability to exceed the guidelines either in the entire district or perhaps schools within the district where they're seeing cases of the variant, high levels of exposure notifications given.
Teachers advocates also calling for mandatory mask usage to include elementary school students, even while seated at their desks.
You'll notice that most of the schools where we've seen variants have been elementary schools. That's a simple measure that could and should be taken to make schools safer for everyone.
While there have been multiple UK variant exposures, BC health officials say there's no proof it's been transmitted in classrooms, so the province does not see the need to modify existing layers of protection.
Based on what we know about the new variants of COVID-19, I would not recommend a change in our masking recommendation. But as with everything else in this pandemic, we have continued to learn, we continue to review the evidence.
It's very good news that the testing that has been done so far has indicated no transmission. And really what that tells us is that our safety plans are working.
But BCTF President Terry Mooring is calling on the province to work proactively rather than wait and see if someone catches the variant at school.
We need to see action taken right away.
In Vancouver, Travis Prasad, City News.
Moving from 10,000 to 100,000 to millions. At first, it might just sound like, oh, that's great, but as a concept, but we have to think about all the steps along the way in terms of operations and the supplies and resources needed.
During the February shortage of COVID vaccines, provinces said they could vaccinate far more people if only they had the doses. Well, this week they'll get their chance as our biggest shipment yet, 640,000 doses, touches down in Canada. But that big shipment comes with its own big challenges.
One of the reasons that Pfizer has been able to achieve, those volumes is that Canada did have to agree that those vials now contain 6 doses and not 5. And with that is the need for a very specific type of syringe to get 6 doses out.
Canada has already ordered 64 million low dead space syringes, though provinces have already reported trouble drawing that 6th dose even with the syringe. There's also questions about how Canadians will actually book vaccine appointments. Many provinces have opted for phone lines or web portals, which could present problems for seniors and those in places without reliable internet.
I run into this all of the time with my northern and remote community work. One solution does not fit all populations. Not every community has connectivity or good internet connection or connection in the home.
User design experts say there's many ways they optimize websites for seniors, everything from larger font choices to graphics to explain what's happening on screen. But one designer says above all, it just needs to make sense to the user.
How the website is flowing from one page to another is quite important, and sometimes that is missing in the government websites. It's just randomly put in there, not understanding how a person would be going from one page to another.
In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.
Threw me on the ground, put a knee on my back.
Indigenous protesters are condemning the Vancouver police for what they say was brutality at a peaceful demonstration in the lobby of a downtown high-rise on Friday. Social media footage of the interactions between police and protesters has called the VPD's conduct into question. This social media footage shows demonstrators in the lobby of a downtown Vancouver building that's home to an insurance office. They were rallying against the company who is insuring the controversial Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. It was the third day of protests against the insurance company. Corvin Mack was one of the 4 people arrested that day, along with fellow activist Bethany, who suffered a sprained wrist in the action. They say they were protecting an Indigenous elder who was thrown to the ground.
They would drag me by my wrist, and when I wouldn't stand, they, which instead of picking me up, they would, when they had plenty of bodies to do so, they decided instead to force onto my wrist pressure in order to move me forward. Obviously, it's unnecessary, but I think it's very telling of like the historical practices of the police and the way that they're utilized by the Canadian Crown in order to hold down Indigenous land defenders and those defending Indigenous rights.
Chief Judy Wilson at the Union of BC Indian Chiefs sees a difference in how police treat Indigenous people at demonstrations.
I was at the Greta Thunberg rally where hundreds of thousands of people were there. The police were just standing on the side and, were not violent. And, our Indigenous people, our youth especially, are standing up in regard to climate change and impacts to, by Trans Mountain. And they were treated differently. They were treated violently. They were treated aggressively.
Sergeant Steve Addison with the VPD says how police respond at protests depends on the actions of protesters and whether those actions are lawful.
The action of the protesters that were occupying the building on Burrard Street on Friday was unlawful. They were trespassing, they were committing mischief, and they were obstructing the police officers in their lawful execution of their duties. That is why they were arrested. A number of people occupied the lobby of this privately owned building, and a number of people occupied the outside of the building. And what they did was they blocked people from being able to come and go. So it became a safety risk for people.
Addison says police allowed the protest to go on for several hours until property managers asked for assistance in removing the protesters. As for the videos showing the police interactions with the demonstrators, Addison says they're being reviewed by the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, an independent body that will decide if further investigation needs to take place. Mack and the others were released on the condition they will appear in court this May, with recommended charges of mischief and obstruction of a police officer.
At the end of the day, the VPD is just another tool with Canada. It's not the source of the issue, but more so just a part of it.
In Vancouver, Kier Junos, City News.
An update now on efforts to clear out homeless campers from Vancouver's Strathcona Park. A statement from the province confirms shelter spaces have been found for at least 120 people at 2 temporary shelters that are set to open in April. Half of the beds will be in a facility on Terminal Avenue near Clark Drive, and the other half will be in the building which used to house the old Army and Navy store on West Hastings Street. Both shelters will have support staff in place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People living there will also have access to daily healthy meals, laundry, and showers. BC Ferries is providing us with a snapshot of how the pandemic has affected its services and bottom line. The company's third quarter results show a marked decline in both vehicle and passenger traffic. Passenger volumes were down around 40%, and vehicle traffic was down more than 20%. BC Ferries says this would have taken more than $56 million out of its bottom line, but thanks to a federal and provincial restart funding program, it's reporting net earnings of nearly $100 million. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight. Thanks for watching and have a great night.